The woman sitting alone at the corner table owned nearly half the buildings on Main Street. But looking at her, you'd never know it. Not the regulars, not the staff, and certainly not the waitress who was about to serve a meal that would change both of their lives. The diner was Rosie's Corner, a small weathered spot in Millfield, Tennessee, where the neon sign hummed long before sunrise. Sarah Miller had worked there for 3 years, 29 years old, exhausted, but with a smile that she gave to every customer, regardless of how her own day was going. Life hadn't been easy for Sarah. Since her father passed away, she had been the one keeping the lights on at home, working double shifts and putting her own dreams on hold. She lived paycheck to paycheck, unaware that the quiet woman by the drafty window held a fortune that could buy the entire town. Sarah had no idea that this morning was any different from the thousands of others she'd worked. She was just doing her job, unaware that a single interaction over the next few minutes would dictate the rest of her future. It was a freezing Tuesday morning when the door creaked open and Eleanor stepped inside. She wore a faded, patched gray coat, and her hands trembled as she sat at the least desirable table in the house. When Sarah approached, Eleanor whispered that she just wanted the cheapest thing on the menu. The request didn't go unnoticed. A man in an expensive suit at a nearby table smirked and told her, loud enough for the room to hear, that she belonged at a charity, not a diner. The room went quiet. Eleanor flushed a deep red, gripping the edge of the table as if she wanted to disappear into the floor. No one spoke up. They just watched as the old woman stared down at her empty hands. In that moment, Eleanor was invisible to almost everyone, just another person the world had decided was no longer worth the effort of basic respect. Sarah was the only one left to decide if that silence was going to hold. Sarah walked right past the man in the suit and knelt so she was eye to eye with Eleanor. She told her not to worry about the price, that the diner was running a special promotion that morning, and Eleanor had walked in just in time for a free plate of pancakes. There was no promotion. Sarah knew the cost would come directly out of her own tips at the end of the shift. But she watched Eleanor eat every bite of that meal with a sense of quiet relief, and Sarah made sure her coffee stayed hot the entire time. When it was time to go, Eleanor reached into her pocket and pulled out a single worn copper penny. She apologized that it wasn't more, but Sarah took the coin with a genuine thank you, treating it with as much care as a $20 bill. Sarah didn't know the woman was wealthy, and she didn't expect a reward. She simply wanted to make sure another human being felt like they belonged in the room. The following morning, the routine at Rosie's Corner was interrupted. A polished black car was parked out front, and a man in a gray suit stood by the door, waiting. He introduced himself as Richard Hale, an attorney. He was looking for Sarah Miller, and his expression told her immediately that this wasn't about a breakfast order. He told her that the woman she had served the day before, Eleanor Whitfield, had passed away quietly in her sleep that night. Sarah had to sit down. It's rare to feel a genuine sense of loss for a stranger you only knew for 30 minutes, but Sarah felt the weight of Eleanor's absence as if they had been friends for years. As the lawyer opened his briefcase, Sarah began to realize that her small act of kindness on a random Tuesday had reached much further than the diner walls. Eleanor Whitfield had been one of the wealthiest property owners in the county. After losing her husband and son years earlier, she had moved away from public life, living so simply and quietly that most people in Millfield didn't even know she existed. This map shows what Eleanor had been doing for the last several months. She had visited dozens of establishments across 3 counties, always dressed in the same worn coat, waiting to see how people would treat someone who appeared to have nothing. Eleanor had gone straight to her lawyer's office after leaving the diner the day before. She updated her will to leave the entire building, which she had secretly owned for 2 decades, and a full renovation fund to the waitress who had treated her with dignity. In her final letter, Eleanor wrote that she had spent years surrounded by people who only saw her for her assets. Sarah was the first person in a long time who saw her as a person, even when she offered nothing but a single penny in return. By treating a stranger as an equal, Sarah had provided Eleanor with something her fortune never could: the knowledge that there was still someone in the world who was kind simply because it was the right way to be. Months later, the diner had a new coat of paint and a steady stream of customers, but Sarah made sure the atmosphere hadn't changed. She was the owner now, but she still wore her apron and still worked the floor every morning. Near the corner table by the window, she placed a small brass plaque to remember the woman who had walked in from the cold. Sarah continued to serve every customer with the same warmth she had shown Eleanor, knowing firsthand that the person sitting across from you might be carrying a story you can't even imagine. We never truly know whose life we are impacting with a simple gesture. If you believe in the power of a small act, comment the word kindness below, and subscribe for more stories about the good that still exists in the world.